When the human fleet reached the Cerulean Crown, the galaxy expected fire, but Queen Valera offered a table instead. A cold moonstone table beneath captured stars. Her nobles stood behind her smiling like knives, already dreaming of human extinction. And across from them sat Ambassador Hale, exhausted, carrying one folded contract and the silence of a species cornered by the void. The Queen signed first, the humans signed second, and peace was purchased. Not with gold, not with honor, but with humiliation. The contract stripped humanity bare. Harrow's Gate became crown territory. The human navy was limited to 12 vessels. Mining rights were cut away, expansion frozen, and human children recorded as dependents of the throne. The nobles celebrated, the wars stopped. But as Hale left the palace, he whispered, "Remember this. We are not defeated, we are buying time." And 20 years later, the bill came due. Princess Meryl found the contract inside her mother's archive. Sealed under royal blood glass, she had grown up hearing that humans were grateful, harmless, saved by the crown, but the old paper told another story. Surrender, tribute, restriction, obedience, every word smelling of fear. She read the names of the vanished cities of Harrow's Gate, and for the first time, understood that peace could wear a crown and still be a prison. She confronted Valera in the orbital garden. "Mother, you bought peace with chains," she said. Valera looked older than the Empire. "I bought survival," she answered. "The nobles wanted human graves on every world. I gave them 20 years of breathing room." Meryl stepped closer. "You gave them 20 years to remember who held the leash." The Queen's eyes hardened. "Mercy is never clean, daughter. Sometimes it is only violence delayed long enough for someone wiser to choose differently." Then every alarm in the palace began to scream. Across 12 sectors, human ships vanished from registries. Border buoys went blind, dead shipyards lit up. Mining drones awakened in abandoned belts, and from Harrow's Gate came a broadcast that broke through every royal channel. A young human voice, calm as winter, said only this: "The lease is over. We are home." The nobles demanded war. The admirals demanded first strike authority, but Meryl ordered the contract brought into the High Assembly. Ministers called her naive. Priests called humanity treacherous. Guards hesitated, yet she lifted the paper high. "This is not peace," she said. "This is fear pretending to be law." Then, before her mother and a watching galaxy, the princess tore the contract apart. The sound was small. The consequence was enormous. Humanity answered with no official warships beyond the legal 12. Instead, thousands of civilian hulls emerged from shadow routes. Freighters, ice haulers, hospital ships, farm carriers, armored with removable plates, carrying rail cannons disguised as cargo supports. They had built no navy, so they built homes that could fight. They had raised no army, so every citizen learned to defend another. And then humanity came like dawn with teeth. At Harrow's Gate, crown destroyers opened fire first, slicing through the leading human ships, but the wrecks did not die properly. They split into smaller craft, every broken section still moving, still shielding the ships behind it, still launching drones and rescue pods. The aliens watched in horror as debris became tactics, as damage became movement. Humans had designed vessels to survive being killed, because humans had always expected the universe to be unfair. On the Royal Command Deck, Valera's admirals requested planetary bombardment. One clean wound to end the rebellion. The Queen raised her hand, torn between old fear and guilt. But Meryl stepped in front of her. "No," she said. "You will not murder people because they learned how to stand." Meryl pointed to the screens, where human medical barges pulled crowned survivors from burning ships while still under fire. "No, Admiral," she whispered. "Their mercy is dooming you." That was when the throne finally cracked. The human flagship, an ugly black carrier called Unwritten, broke through the blockade and broadcast to the Queen. Ambassador Hale was dead. but his grandson stood on the bridge wearing the same gray coat. "Queen Valera," he said, "we honored your contract. You limited our warships, so we taught our homes to fight. You denied our mines, so we harvested comets. You banned our armies, so we raised citizens. You thought surrender would make humans smaller, but pressure does not shrink us." Before Valera could answer, the nobles launched their coup, screaming that the royal house had been softened by human weakness. Meryl drew her blade and stood before her mother. A human boarding pod smashed through the wall. Emergency shields flashed. Air screamed into space. 6 human marines stepped out, saw the princess protecting the queen, saw the nobles attacking, and chose the side protecting life. Here is what the galaxy never understood about humans. They remember cruelty, yes. They carve it into songs, scars, and ship names. But they also remember the hand that refuses to strike when striking would be easy. The Marines did not execute Valera. They sealed the breach, disarmed the nobles, treated the wounded, and one woman with Harrow's Gate tattooed across her knuckles offered Meryl a bloodied hand. "You tore the paper," she said, "we saw by dawn." The Crown blockade collapsed, not because every ship was destroyed, but because half its crews refused to keep firing. They had watched nobles demand slaughter, while human farmers rescued enemy pilots. They had watched a princess bleed for truth. They had watched the so-called dependent species act more royal than the crown. Shame became doubt. Doubt became choice. Choice became rebellion. Queen Valera abdicated before the assembled worlds. "I bought peace with a human contract," she said, and mistook silence for consent. "My daughter tore it up and found justice underneath." Meryl accepted the crown only after turning to the human envoy. No kneeling, no tribute, no leash, only alliance, freely given. Freely ended, the envoy reached out, not as a subject, but as an equal. And the new queen took his hand years later. Children learned the ending this way. Humanity won because when caged, they studied the bars. When disarmed, they turned survival into a weapon. When humiliated, they remembered their name. And when revenge stood within reach, they chose a future instead in the rebuilt hall. One scrap of the old contract remained under glass. Engraved below it were the words every empire learned to fear. "Peace bought by chains will always expire, but dignity, once returned, becomes a star no throne can extinguish."